Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. WeBelieveDigital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening, and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. We're broadcasting from an African-American-owned broadcasting studio, WeBelieveDigital.com. Now, We Believe Digital is a little bit different than most studios. See, we focus on the activities and they celebrate the achievements, and we chronicle all of the things that are happening in the African-American community. And there's so much going on. I'm amazed every day when I look at the 6 and 10 o'clock news that 80% of their programs are dedicated to what happened in the African-American community. Even though we are the minority in the state, some 40% of the state of Mississippi is minority, specifically Black Americans. But yet we get 80% of the TV time. But none of that TV time is positive. So we have a big job to do here at We Believe Digital. You got to balance the scales a bit. We got to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We got to do that in a factual way, in an unbiased way, and we certainly are going to have to tell the truth. And the truth is that African Americans have been experiencing a long lifetime of things that were not designed to help them. And so we deal with that on these shows. Now, We Believe Digital. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and family and send us stars. We need the revenue. We need the support. Check us out. If you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to go ahead and subscribe to our program. We'd like to get our subscribers up well over 50,000. And so you can help us do that. If you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, then we want you to hit the donate button. We also want you to share the program with your friends and family. Now, when you go to WeBelieveDigital.com, it'll look a little different than most websites, because there you'll see you have a lot of topics, a lot of choices. So if you're interested in what's going on in the African-American community under the topic of inspiration, you choose inspiration and scroll down and look at all of the various pastors that you will see there. And they have their own channels. Bishop Ronnie Crudup at New Horizon Church has his own channel, and you'll see all of his stories and videos and Wednesday night services there on his channel. And your pastor could have his very own channel. Now, we're different in many ways because at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, everybody wishes they could have that prime spot so that they could bring their broadcast live to their audiences all across the world. Well, We Believe Digital will allow you to do that. We can have 10 pastors that are live at 8 o'clock on We Believe Digital. Believe that. Get that. 10 pastors could be live at webelievedigital.com at 8 o'clock. You simply scroll or toggle between the programs that you want to watch and enjoy that service. If you like to see the president of the Southern Baptist Association, Jerry Young, who's housed right here in Jackson, Mississippi, you can watch his message on Sunday morning at 8. But then if you decide you want to go over and switch over to New Jerusalem and hear Bishop Dwayne Pickett, then you can do that as well. And so you have these options with We Believe Digital. Now, another interesting topic down there is, of course, hot topics. And you'll find a lot of shows like this one in that category under hot topics. And here, Dr. Henderson and I have put out some very important information that you won't get anywhere else. And it's stored right there. It's archived right there for you to go back and look at your leisure. If you stroll down a little bit further, you'll come to our We Believe Radio. Now, you click on We Believe Radio, and then you will have the ability to listen to some of the very best music that you've ever heard, and we're broadcasting all over the world. The broadcast studio is live all over the world. This show is being seen in Hong Kong. It's being seen in Malawi. It's being seen all over the world. On the We Believe Radio, you can hear the greatest music of all time all over the world. And so we need your support here at this broadcast studio. You know, our next venture, and we already made some arrangements and had some discussions to acquire a terrestrial frequency, which will give us that coverage as well. We're looking at sub-channels on various TV stations so that we can expand and bring you a real African-American-owned media company. Now, we're well on our way. No, we have 16 bars that we partnered with here in Jackson, Mississippi, and they are our recording studio. So if you have songs that you want to get recorded, you contact us here at webelievedigital.com. Email us, and then you can get scheduled to record your music there in the studio with Kevin Jones over at 16 Bars. He'll be opening up a studio here in this building very shortly. We also have the film inside of the deal tied down with Prime Stone Media with Drika Chavon. You take a look at her website at Prime Stone Media, some of the highest quality productions you ever wanted to see. And she's housed right here in this building. She's doing documentaries all over the world, and she's currently working in Atlanta, producing a documentary over there. So then, but we don't stop there. If you are interested in print media, then the Mississippi Link newspaper is housed right here in this building as well. It's a 29-year-old publication. The publisher of the Mississippi Link newspaper, publisher Jackie Hampton, is also on the board at the National Newspaper Association. And so here in Mississippi, we are trying to put together the finest media company that you've ever seen. So I don't know if we're missing any elements to that. Yes, okay. Somebody just reminded me, we also do all of the social media. And we do all of the commercials for your various campaigns. If you're running for office out there and you want a commercial, contact us. Contact us, and it'll be first class. And then you can run that commercial on any medium that you want. If you want to run it on WLBT, that's fine, do so. If you want to run it on We Believe Digital all during the day, all during the evening, then do so. You strip the audio and send it over to WMPR radio station. That's totally up to you. You see, we have the ability, and all we need now is you, your involvement, your participation to make this one of the best black-owned media companies in the world. And why do I say black-owned as opposed to just the best media company in the world? I'm reminded that my brother, attorney Socrates Garrett in Memphis, Tennessee, was a guest speaker at a Black History program. And when he introduced himself, he said, "I am the best criminal defense attorney in the world. I'm not the best black criminal defense attorney. I'm just the best, period." So he de-emphasized the black part, but you hear me emphasizing the black part. And I'm emphasizing it so that our children will know and hear that this is a black thing, that they can be proud of it, that they can have role models, that they can know that black folk can do more than gangbang and be involved in criminal activities, but that we are producers. We're not just consumers. So this program and this project, this studio is your studio. You call us at 800-492-5186 and schedule your own podcast show. You call us at 800-492-5186 and advertise with us. Your basic advertising spots are some 40 spots for less than $400. That's $10 a spot. And we'll run that throughout the entire day in our broadcast studio, also on our radio station. We'll also handle your print advertising as well in the print medium and on all of our websites. So you call us at 800-492-5186 and join in on this movement. We're growing. We're moving fast. We need your help. All hands on deck. Now, as always, it's good to have in the studio with me my close friend and my compadre, and a gentleman that is sought after all over this country as one of the most renowned orators and guest speakers that you ever will imagine. He is a gentleman that I've always said that not only is he book smart, that's why he's Dr. Eldridge Henderson, but he's street smart. Because he was born on a plantation, and you don't survive the plantation by what was written in the book. You survive the plantations because of the nature that God put in you. The number one drive that you have in you at all is to survive against all odds and against all comers, and you learn that in the streets. So, Dr. Henderson, it's good to have you in the studio with us this evening, and welcome. How have you been?
Well, I've been doing fine, Mr. Socrates. I want to congratulate you, though, on the international perspective that you have for this service here, radio, television, newspaper, everything. And I remember when you started many years ago, you started small, and now you're international. And in just a few years, the way you're talking, I'm going to be hearing you talk about space news. And you just don't slow down, you don't give up. You say, I can always do more and do better. And that must be what you learned, just as I did when I lived on that plantation, that things are good on a plantation if you own it. But if you don't, you better figure out how to acquire something. And that's what kept me moving forward, trying to get something that the owner of the plantation had. And that was another plantation. And I told you a few months ago, I ended up in just exactly what I did. I purchased some of that plantation some years ago, the one that I was born on, right across the fence from where I was born. And now it's amazing how I feel when I can just sit there and look across the fence and look at those fields and the ponds and the woods that we would go and hunt in, where we would go and try to hide to keep our parents from finding us and calling us to come to work. And all those days reflect to me now in a positive manner. And I'm saying to myself, I must do better. I must live longer. I must take care of myself because I have at least another 3 or 4 generations that I must work for. It's not about Eldridge Henderson anymore. It's about that 200 or 300 years of Hendersons and Socrates and Garretts and others that must be prepared to see beyond the present Now, when you look beyond the present, that is something that is unknown. So you create that as you move forward in your inner circle, your inner mind, where you say, I got to do better. I must do better. I must help another person look into the darkness with my light, if I have any light. That's what it's all about, Mr. Socrates. And you are a man that's exhibiting that and been doing this at least 50 or 60 years. That's amazing.
Wow. Doc, I know what you mean to walk across the land that you own. And on your show last night, we talked about blacks used to be landowners, and blacks had sections of land. That's over 500 acres. I believe you told me that's 500 acres in a section. And the ability to walk out of your door now and look at your cattle, look at your horses, look at your fields, your cotton and your corn that belongs to you, gives you a total different perspective about life. Our kids don't have that perspective now.
That's true. That's true.
What are they missing?
Well, they're missing the ability to think about the future and forget about the past to the point where they don't moan and groan over what used to happen. When I look over at across the fence at that old plantation where I was a slave for 17 years, I remember when I would be working like a slave, just like a slave. No limits on the hours that we put in. We were told when to work, when not to work, when to go to school. And even on Saturdays, we had to work if it rained on Monday. And on Sundays, we only had time to go to church and eat fried chicken. And that was the greatest meal we ever had. But let me tell you this final thing, though, about this old plantation deal. When I was looking at the plantation, I'd say last year, looking all around the woods and everything, and I could see again in my inner mind, me, my brothers and neighbors and others out there working. And when I looked here some months ago, you didn't see the Hendersons and my cousins and neighbors out there working. You saw other people out there working, and we sitting across the fence. And the only difference is, I don't drink a lot of sweet tea. Otherwise, I think I might change that, start drinking sweet tea as I look across the plantation at other people doing the work, producing things, making things, building things. That's what it's all about, Mr. Secretary.
Doc, other people are not African Americans.
Well, I must say you're right, but I don't want to say who is doing most of the work.
Well,
because I would just tell you, we did work with a lot of black Americans, but there are a few little sidebars that I won't discuss about
Okay.
that. But I always wanted someone that's going to do the work. You get paid, you do the work.
Well, Doc, you mentioned about your desire to create a better life for individuals yet to come. That you're really not focused on Dr. Henderson at this point, that you're focused on trying to prepare and remove obstacles out of the path of the next generation and the generation to follow and generations to come. And there was a great man that said and recognized that at some point in your life, and I'm sure that you and I both will reach that point at some day, that he said, I may not get there with you, but we will get to the promised land. Do you know who said that?
Yeah, I believe Dr. Martin Luther King said that.
So it was important to him, knowing that he may not get there, he may not see the benefits of his own labor, but someone would. And that's what I got out of what you just said. Now, I realized that Dr. King, you know, was a gentleman that had a philosophy that you probably didn't buy into in terms of nonviolence, but
I did.
You know, he was a great leader.
He was a great leader, a great man. He had great positive insight. Matter of fact, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had insight about 40, 50 years ahead of the average person, including his comrades in the civil rights movement. That man was a deep thinker. He would analyze things as he talked and looked like he had what I call that inner spirit, where he could see things that a lot of us didn't see, knowing that they will probably get better in the future, even though he said, I might not be here to see it. But I look at it just a little different. I intend to see a lot of stuff. I don't intend to leave here premature. He left about maybe 39 years of age, a very young man. I intend to live at least until I'm 119, because I'm going to work every day as long as I'm alive. And if I don't fall dead working, I will never retire.
I don't blame you. Doc, we are getting close to a break, but there are a couple of things that I want you to think about. We had a great talk just then, and this conversation is designed specifically for black folk to understand how proud we are to be African Americans. Just think about that. How proud we are of that fact, to be African Americans and have had some degree of success on the kinds of things we're trying to accomplish. And most importantly, what we're trying to tell you is that you can never quit. That the fight in you is greater than the obstacles that you are confronting. I said earlier that God put in you the strongest desire of all was to survive. That's against all comers, all obstacles. You must survive. Dr. Henderson, you survived the plantation, and you survived racism, and you survived discrimination, and you became Dr. Eldridge Henderson, and now you are a leader in this community that is concerned about those to come behind you.
But the bad news is, all those things that you mentioned are still present. But I don't let that determine the amount of sleep I get at night. That makes me want to wake up and fight against those kind of ideas and ideologies, racism, CRT, critical race theory, so-called Jim Crow, unconstitutional takeovers by the government of black resources and leadership positions, on and on. Now, if they would stop practicing racism and all that other kind of stuff, I probably would leave and decide to move to somewhere I've never been, and that's to Africa.
Well, Doc, I don't believe you're going anywhere.
I don't think so either.
We're up against a station break. You're watching Socrates Garrett live on WeBelieveDigital.com. We've been seen all over the world. You can join this conversation at 800-492-5186. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Well, we're back. This is Socrates Garrett on Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, a city that is in turmoil, a city that is making headlines in the national news and the national media each and every week. If we're not having a water crisis, we're having a garbage crisis, or we're having the city being invaded, takeover by the state of Mississippi. We have highest incarceration rates of any country in the world in the state of Mississippi. And so we're a city that's in trouble. And we're in trouble because we're receiving friendly fire as well as fire from the opposition. Now, Doc and I both were in the military, served this country well, distinguished. And so we understand what friendly fire is like. It is the most dangerous type of confrontation you could ever have. To have someone in the same foxhole with you that's actually firing at you. And so Jackson is experiencing some of that. And we're going to talk about that now. We're going to shift and we're going to talk about some things that are current and that we need to talk about and discuss. One of those is the young lady that was responsible for the brutal assassination and murder of Emmett Till died this week, Miss Bryant. I believe she was 80-some years old, might have been 88 now. And she lived a right long life. Emmett probably was 13. He lived a very short life. Allegedly, he whistled at her, Doc. Allegedly, he whistled at her. And that happened right there in your neck of the woods. You should be held responsible in some way, because that happened on your watch in your community, and this young lady lived to be 88 years old without any repercussions, and that young man was dead and brutally beaten at 13. Do you recall that incident?
I most certainly do. During the time, I was a very young man. We'll just say I was born in the mid-1940s, and that happened in the 50s, so I wasn't what I call a strong teenager at the time, 12 or 13, 11, somewhere like that, but we heard about that. And then we found that we were hearing bad news and erroneous news, because the paper would say, and you hear white people in the community say, oh, that boy's gone back to Chicago, ain't nothing happened to him. He's going to be found at home with his mama. You know, all kinds of things. And of course, black folks at that time, especially in my part of the area, didn't have access to a weekly newspaper. And they did have a few in the area, but we couldn't do anything about it because they were not free, you see. So we heard rumors about what had happened. And eventually we started hearing about other people in the community saying they know exactly what happened. Then we noticed that they had a lot of activity moving around in the Delta and other areas trying to find out what actually happened. And some months later, we found the real story when they found his body in the river.
Doc, I believe that he was taken from the bedroom of his uncle, whose house he was visiting with and living in at the time.
That's correct.
There had to be other black folk in that house that knew what happened, Doc.
There were others, and two or three of them are still alive. Now, the word is, or was, and probably still is, they just bust into the house. We call busting in without permission. You just go to a black person's house during those days and bust in there, kick in the door, just go in without any approvals and say, I'm looking for that boy. And I understand they had a black man with them, and say, that's not him, that's not him. And they went into another room and finally identified Emmett, and he was taken out. And of course, there would have been some highly disturbance if others had been involved in that activity, if it had been a black person going into a White House to do something like that, because they knew then there would be a confrontation that would be ending within 30 seconds. But the black people were so attuned to being passive and prayerful and forgiving that they just allowed that man to take that boy, he and his black supporters, I understand they had a few blacks with them, and say, we're going to turn him over to the hand of the Lord, and I hope they don't do nothing to my boy. And I hope they would probably say, the old man, Mr. Moses, he would probably say, I hope they just go on and whip him up a little bit and send him back to me so I can send him back to his mother in Chicago. But that didn't happen. Now imagine you knew who those people were. You looking into their eyes in the dark. You knew the white ones, you knew the black ones. And you know for sure that you couldn't expect anything good to happen with this situation, and it didn't. And still, the person that caused it indirectly, or maybe directly, was able to live and die in what I call semi-peace in her late 80s. People knew who she was.
Yeah, Miss Bryant.
That's right, Carolyn Bryant. And many said, well, leave her alone. She's an old person. She is sick. Just let her live in peace. That boy's dead now. Forget about it. She is alive. You're supposed to forget about those kind of things and forget about the past. Let's look at what's going on now in Mississippi, in America, in the world. The same things. They're just more pervasive. They are worse than they were in the 1950s and 60s. Because it appears that if black people don't control their destiny in certain areas from birth to death, we're going to be worse off if we allow it to happen than we were in the 1950s and 60s in America and the world.
Now, are you saying that that could happen today to a black boy today?
It is happening. It has happened. It happened a few months ago. I understand they found a young man with his head cut off and had been mutilated up in one little town here in Mississippi. You've heard about that. And people are being found dead all over the place. And many people are missing, males, females, young and old. No one knows what's happening to these black folks. And all these people are not being kidnapped. Most of them are not just leaving home and running away because they don't like their parents and so forth. There are some underlying elements out here in America that's destroying the world. There's a lot of inner negative concepts in a lot of people because many of the people that you know and I know that I've worked with and you work with and you see every day feel that they are losing something that they deserve. And they say black folks specifically are getting too much education, too much politics, too much economic development authority. And we just don't like that, and we're going to put some kind of hamper there and not allow it to happen, and we are going to destroy these black elements and their ideas come hell or high water, and we care nothing about the fact that we are Bible-toting, Christ-loving Christians.
Now,
We're
Doc.
going to be destructive as ever.
Now, Doc,
Yes, sir.
what you're saying is bears out with the evidence. I mean, that happened in Black Wall Street. And black folk were beginning to get a toehold on some things after Reconstruction and beginning to move themselves, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And folk went in there and just burned it down and destroyed the whole village and killed up the people.
That's right, because they were allowed to do that, Mr. Socrates. Now, a lot of people are so sensitive these days, they don't like people to talk about the fact that most of the things that happen to black people is because we were brainwashed to believe that you're supposed to allow things to happen to you and get your reward later. The new concept ought to be that I'm going to protect myself regardless of the situation. I'm going to do unto others as they do unto. But now, I done told you before, I didn't say do unto others as they do unto you as an individual. This is a collective thing. There is no reason in the world for a black town to be burned, bombed. The National Guard, police, and others come in and patrol the people, lock up all the black folks, and give them 24 hours to get out of town without strong resistance. One thing I've learned in the war, sir, if you fight back, you get some respect from the enemy every time.
You learn that in elementary school.
That's
If
right.
you let them take your lunch every day without a fight,
You won't have any lunch.
you won't have any lunch.
Plus, your psychic will be demoted to the point where you want to quit school. It's just terrible when you let people violates you, and you do nothing but pray about it. Even the Lord doesn't like that. That's bad. That's bad, sir.
I think the Lord got angry enough to tear some things up himself.
Of course he did, and he's going to tear up some more things.
Wow. Now, Doc, we're having a sensitive conversation, and we're trying to make it relevant to today and get some folk to understand how all these things connect and control our destiny as of this moment. Now, in Jackson, Mississippi, in the legislature recently introduced a bill, House Bill 1020. Now, that bill allowed the state of Mississippi to put its own police department inside of the city limits of Jackson, Mississippi, that did not report to the elected officials in the city of Jackson. The state put in its own judges to hear the cases and its own prosecuting attorneys right inside of an 85% black city. And then everybody wonders, what is wrong with black people? Don't you want to eliminate the crime? Don't you realize that crime is too high in Mississippi? Yes, we do realize that. But here's the part that you gotta go back and deal with in Mississippi. And our elected officials, Doc, many of them are afraid to have this conversation. And even though we elected them to have the conversation, they are silent. They're not saying anything. But you gotta go back and remember, now we're in Mississippi. Doc and I were just talking about the days in the 1950s when Emmett Till was taken from his bedroom, beat, hung, put a fan around his neck, and drowned in the river in the 1950s. Now, you got to go back and remember. Then in the 60s, we come back and Serena and Goodman and Cheney were buried alive up in Philadelphia, Mississippi. You got to go back and remember. You got to go back and remember then that Medgar Evers was gunned down in his driveway, and Byron D. LeBeckwith said when they asked him in court, what did he commit the crime? He said, no, I didn't kill him, but the nigger show is dead. You got to go back and remember that we have seen white folk come into black houses, take their children and take their women, and have their own way with them. You got to remember that the Klan infiltrated the sheriff, the legal professions in the state of Mississippi, and all hell broke loose at night when the crosses were being burned in everybody's yards and the horses were riding the sheets on everybody's head. So you want me then, you want me to sit here as an African-American male having witnessed all this and say that we need white folk, not elected by us, to ride through our cities with guns and dogs and have their way with us? Now, I can't go along with that because of our history, because of the personal experiences that I've had and the things that I've seen. I can't trust the fact that white folk are going to adjudicate, prosecute, and control with an even hand.
That is not going to happen. Never has happened, never will happen, unless we continue to allow it to happen. Of course it will. Black folks got to understand, Mr. Socrates, and I've been saying this sometimes, if you don't control certain activities in your life from birth to death, you will always be a mental and physical slave economically and socially to the other groups. And it doesn't take a lot for black people to start turning themselves around if they would just control those 5 areas that I've been talking about for years. education and training, economic development, their own religion, their leadership, and politics. When you control those 5 areas of activity where you're in the majority, wherever you're in the majority, you should control those 5 areas, and your job should be able to manage the funds, manage the police, manage economic development, hire the people that are necessary and qualified to promote the good will of those resources that you have, and I'm talking about tax money and money you can get from other areas. That's the responsibility of the black man, and he can do it in areas where he's in control if he is bold enough to select qualified black men and women that have the backbone and the will and the skill to negotiate for their children's future 2 and 3 generations from now, and not looking at themselves as an important person with a so-called high education, so-called 30, 40 years of leadership, and never made a decision that you didn't call somebody to get some support from. Boss, we have $2,000 we got to spend now on a contract for toilet paper. Who shall I give it to? I'm looking at Socrates. Boss will say, well, Socrates might be a good man, but I don't think you need to give him that contract. Think about somebody else. Who you think about, boss? You make that decision. It would hurt this black man so psychologically, he's going to have to call back that 3rd time and say, boss, I don't know anybody. You know anybody? Oh, yes, I got a good friend down in Noxubee County that can sell you that toilet paper. That's my cousin. Is anything wrong with that, boss? No, sir. You make the decision. I'm just telling you where it is. That's the way it's done. We don't have bold leaders. We have people that have accepted certain largesse from people that put them in a position where they are dependent. We don't look at our own resources and say, I'm going to pool my resources as an individual and as family, and we're going to build and buy and set our future in a secure position so we can get our children educated, so we can teach them instead of getting a business degree and working at a Fortune 500 company, they can get a business degree and work for themselves. On and on and on. So we need our religious institutions to be independent. We need our leadership to be trained through another educational system, not the public school system. On and on, sir. It'll take 4 weeks to talk about this program that I've been thinking about for 40 years. And all of this can be done and initiated in 30, 60, or 90 days.
Well, you're going to have individuals with backbone. That's a term that I hadn't heard in a while. An individual that's got to be bold enough as a leader to say that Socrates is a good candidate for the contract for toilet tissue, therefore I think I'll move forward with that. You've got to have individuals that understand that until we start to build our own communities, control our economy, that we'll always be begging hand and foot to the master to determine whether or not it's okay for us to do what's right for our people. And so we gotta have individuals with that backbone. Now, Doc, the one thing, observation I have here recently, there has been a couple indictments that have been troubling me. One of those indictments was for former Sheriff Marshawn Chrysler that I've known for 40 years. Now, Doc, as a law enforcement officer, a decorated law enforcement officer that served in Iraq, that was military police, did undercover work, was shot on duty here serving the citizens in Jackson, Mississippi, ran for sheriff, was unsuccessful, then became appointed over the juvenile detention center and was doing a good job down there, has now been indicted and accused, Doc, of giving ammunition to a felon and taking illegal campaign contributions. Now, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Now, Brett Hazard, if he was here, he'd pontificate and he'd have quote the statutes and all of that various stuff. But let me just say this. I was here when they rolled into Canton, Mississippi and took C.O. Chin out of his house and put him in parchment. I've seen black men get railroaded all over this country from day in and day out. It would be absolutely unimaginable for someone with the integrity and the dedication to law enforcement to sell ammunition or give ammunition to a convicted felon. I just have hard times with that. And so we've seen those two indictments of black police officers. We see black leadership under attack all the time. We watch it. We watch the leadership be destroyed from day in and day out. And we started out with Martin Luther King and we mega and we just Vernon Damon and we walk our way all the way up through to today and we see our leaders falling. Now, they've had 4 college presidents at Jackson State University in the last 6-7 years. 4. What is going on with black leadership today? Are they under some undue pressure that we don't recognize? Is the system criminalizing them? What in your opinion, is going on out here?
Well, let's look at the beginning. Now, I want to talk about your first concern about the sheriff candidate and his alleged activity. That's all it is, an alleged activity. Once you're indicted, you make a plea, and if you say you're innocent until proven guilty. You can continue to work, go to church, raise your family, run for public office if that's what you're doing or whatever you want to do, until you go to trial. One shouldn't put a lot of emphasis on that because anything you hear is usually hearsay, and if you don't have any evidence, that's where you have to look at it. They look at the former President Trump the same way. People are saying he has been castigated to the point where he can't be president again. That is not true. Trump will probably beat any Democrat I know right now if they will vote tomorrow. So he can be president again. He's only been indicted, which means he's been accused, and he has not been found guilty of anything, and all the Democrats did, and many others that want to have Trump to go somewhere and disappear and go to sleep, it just made him more famous and more focused. So I wouldn't worry too much about being accused of something until you find the real facts. And it's very embarrassing, of course, for individuals and family members to have this happen to their relatives and friends. But one has to always remember that just because you've been accused does not mean you're guilty.
Well, Doc, we're running out of time. The time has gone so fast this evening. I'm not exactly sure. I have to ask the engineer, do we have another section?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're going to take a station break because we started a little late. That's why I got a little confused at the hour here. We're going to take a station break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to deal with this a little bit more because it's critically important that we take a real close look at what is happening to our leaders in today. That we here at Black Media have to have the ability and the courage to say exactly what Dr. Henderson has just said. You can indict a ham sandwich, but you're going to have to bring evidence that show that our leaders have betrayed and misbehaved in the manner that's being alleged. We're going to take a station break, and we'll be right back.
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
We're back. You're watching Socrates Garrett live on WeBelieveDigital.com. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. We're dealing with some very sensitive issues on this broadcast. We're talking about things that are happening in the African American community on a daily basis, current activities, things that are going on now. It's critically important that we have these conversations. And we look forward to keeping you apprised on the developments as they occur in these sensitive issues. I want to encourage our pastors out there to rally behind the individuals, to stand with individuals during their most difficult time. You know, most of the time people are going to run from you when you're in trouble. When you get labeled one way or the other, you find that your closest allies and friends will leave you. And part of that is because we don't want to stand, because we don't want to be associated with the elements that are being discussed. And so we have to learn that, just like Dr. Henderson said, that President Trump is going to run for president even though he is facing charges up in Manhattan. He'll still run for president. His core group of folk will stand with him every day, and they will stand with him till the very end. And so we have to have that same belief and loyalty that says that our folk are worth fighting for, that our pastors need to rally around and hug that family and say to them that the turmoil and the trouble that you have in here now won't last always. I'm reminded of what Martin Luther King said from the Birmingham jail. It is not the cry of the white folk that bothers me and what they're attempting to do, but it is the appalling silence of black folk, and in particular, black ministers. Now is the time, on the very front end, now is the time to assert your influence, to find the truth. So all we really want to know, what is the truth? And a lot of time, the truth can be difficult to ascertain, but we respect the opinion of 12 individuals if it's a jury trial. And many times we respect the opinion of the judge by himself or herself, one individual. So we certainly then need to respect the influence and the concerns of those leaders that are the keepers or the shepherds of the flock. Where did we go wrong? How did we fall into age-old traps? We go back and we look at our history, and we know that traps are being set every day for black leadership, every day. And we cannot allow, we can't take, and this is one of the things that I think that we have done wrong. The elders can't take their hands off these young folk. We can't, because, and I get this because my daddy took his hands off me because he said, boy, you better educated than I am. I sent you to school. I expect you to do more than I've done. Mistake. You got to keep your hands on them all the way up until they're elders.
That's correct.
And at that point in time, maybe we can circumvent some of the pitfalls and the traps that we find ourselves falling into. Now, I want to send my prayers out to Officer Torrance's family and Officer Chrysler's family. I'm praying for both of you each and every day, and I encourage our pastors to pray for that family as well. Now, Doc, in the European community, there is no pullback, there is no withdrawal of support. When things are bad, doesn't look good for our Governor Phil Bryant, I don't see anybody saying anything negative about the governor. As a matter of fact, I see him running commercials every week.
Of course. That's the way it's supposed to be.
And his standing in the community is as high as it's ever been.
That's exactly the way it's supposed to be.
So we got to learn how to support one another, how to stand strong, and if someone has done wrong, then they pay the price. And then we work on redemption.
That's the way it should be. I hate to continue to say that, but you must understand, just because you have a history of being relegated to the bottom of the pit doesn't mean you have to continue to do that. Anytime a major Caucasian gets in trouble, he is usually considered innocent. Even when he is proven guilty, he is still sought to be innocent by many. It makes no difference, because you don't want to give in and make people think you're weak just because you accuse someone and they are found guilty. You have to look at the other side. And the government always put things in order so you can look at the other side. It's called a repeal. Just because you're found guilty on one level, you can appeal to the next level. You can then move on eventually to the state Supreme Court, and then to the federal court system, and go to the what we call the super Supreme Court, and win, even though you lost all the cases from circuit court up to the Supreme Court. So we got to learn to fight that way and stick with people until the end. And that's why I told you that the current former president is going to be so tough to beat. The Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, or whoever decide to run against him, going to have a hard road to hoe, and that's an old country plantation word. It's going to be hard. That road going to get long, because Trump and his boys going to have millions of dollars coming in from those political action committees, from foreign nations, which is illegal, and all kinds of money is coming in, all kinds of deals being made with the Chinese, the Russians, the Israelis, and others that's looking out for their interests. When these people get in office, don't nobody care basically what one has done. If you are in a position where you can help me, I can overlook your faults. Jesus always did it. He can overlook your fault and give you a chance to be redeemed. Just ask for forgiveness, and you can be saved, and you can get into the pearly gate eventually. But you can't afford to give up and condemn everybody just because they've been accused.
Doc, I appreciate that, and I hope our viewers all over the world are listening. We've lost so many fine African-American men and women. It's been such a tragedy. And so we just can't afford to lose them. We have to find a way to, elders, you got to find your way to lay your hands on them and guide them through some difficult times. And young people out there, especially in the business community, if you don't know the rules of engagement, then don't participate. Don't wager into rooms and conversations that you don't know nothing about the subject matter. Don't be so eager to say that I want this contract or that contract. Don't move so quickly. And so you gotta learn what you can say, when you can say it, and what you ought not say. Because you got to remember that we've been talking a lot about the Bible, but it says that whatever was done in the dark will eventually come to light, especially when people are looking at you every day. Every time an African American gets a contract, it's scrutinized. Every time. Every time an African American moves into a position that historically they have not been in, it's scrutinized. And there are those who have a sole purpose to see if they can destroy that. Don't allow that individual or that group to move any higher. It's clear, it's crystal clear. That's why we find ourselves relegated to the bottom. And that's so far from who we really are. We're not bottom feeders. So far from who we're supposed to be as leaders, as producers, individuals that stand for something. As Doc says, that individuals that don't have light are supposed to be able to navigate the darkness with his light. That's what we have to be for one another. Now, Doc, President Biden said he's going to run for re-election. The man is quite senior. Some would say he's old.
What do you call quite senior?
I don't know. That's why I couldn't quite find the right words to describe his age.
The man allegedly will be in his mid-80s if he can finish this term and it runs again. He'll be 85 or 86. Now, what?
I believe he'll be 88, but go ahead.
It might be, but I don't know if it's under 92 is fine. People got to understand that when you have a position as president of anything, you have at least 10 or 15 assistants below you that's going to do the research, going to do all the paperwork, that's going to give you talking points. And all you have to do is be alive to say yes or no and answer 2 or 3 questions. And if you don't want to answer the question, you can say no comment. It doesn't make any difference how old Biden is. He can still be president because he's not going to make any decisions anyway. He's going to be told what is best for the country according to tradition, according to the American international laws. And he's going to accept that. And that's why you have supporters, co-directors, cabinet secretaries, interns, researchers. The older you get, the better leader you can be if you have enough sense to be quiet and listen and say, you give me the best 3 things I need to know about making this decision about this international matter, this local matter, this monetary matter. And I want you to look at the historical narrative behind it and give me the 3 best angles. And I'll make a decision. And I'm not going to take any comments, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the president says going to happen. And step away.
Wow.
So age has nothing to do with it.
Age has nothing to do with it. Now, there are those who are concerned that the president's age will, something were to happen to him in this next term, that we would get a black female president.
Well, some are concerned about that, but I don't worry about that. I don't worry about that.
Do you think that Vice President Harris would be able to handle the job?
Of course she can handle the job because she's going to have enough handlers to help her handle anything that she gets into. She's handling the vice presidency right now. I told you how it works. And when you had a position of leadership, sir, that's the best position to have, to be at the top of the barrel. Other people be the little ants down at the bottom, going to be doing all the circulating and working and feeding you and getting you ready for whatever is necessary, dressing you, and you're going to step out clean and sharp with your final decision. So she could be president, even though a lot of people not going to want her to be president because you don't supposed to have but one black president during a generation, you see. So they didn't want Obama, but they had to get him. We're not going to go into that because the nation was about to fall apart. But they said we can't have two in the same generation. But that has nothing to do with anything either.
Doc, we're running out of time. We got started a little bit late, and I know we have other shows that are going to come on later on, so we're going to close the program out. But now you're watching Socrates Garrett Live, and you're watching us here on We Believe Digital Broadcasting Studio. If you're watching us on YouTube, go to We Believe Podcast on YouTube and subscribe to us. If you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and family and send us stars. If you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, hit the donate button and go down and scroll through that website and choose the topics that you're interested in and enjoy things that we've provided there for you. Check us out on the new internet radio station. Great music all year long, all day long. And so we're building and we're growing and we need your help. If you are a young artist, if you want your own podcast studio, or if you want us to train you in how to run this production studio and be a disc jockey on the radio station, give us a call at 800-492-5186. As always, we are grateful to have our sponsor, earthblendcoffee.com. earthblendcoffee.co, the finest coffee that you can buy. Go to the website, earthblendcoffee.co. Sign up for a subscription where we will send you, based upon your usage, we'll send you 1 bag a week or 2 bags every 2 weeks, or we'll send you a bag every week. We'll send you 1 bag a month. Just depends upon how you drink coffee. I guarantee you that if you try it, you'll be a customer of ours for a long time here at Earth Blend Coffee. You've seen the commercials running on this show. Great coffee. earthblendcoffee.co. Order. This Mother's Day is coming up. Get a subscription for your mom so that she can enjoy great coffee every day. Roasted and produced right here in Jackson, Mississippi by African Americans. I just got to keep saying that. It is time that African Americans be allowed to move into mainstream in our economics. Earth Blend Coffee is our product that is sponsoring this program, that we're doing everything that we can to move it forward in the marketplace. earthblendcoffee.co. Subscribe for the coffee. Enjoy it. Join us on the podcast show. Doc, I'm going to give you the last words. It's been great talking with you this afternoon. Why don't you close us out?
Well, thank you, Mr. Socrates. I want to tell all the viewers and the listeners that we support whatever you all do, ladies and gentlemen. And what I want you to do is to support the WeBelieveDigital.com. And, of course, those that want to hear the real news and want to hear a salvation plan for black people and want to hear the non-radio or TV version need to contact me at Action Leadership Institute at the number 601-201-1957 so you can get the real salvation plan that show how black people, sir, can determine their destiny in those 5 areas of activity from birth to death and can start doing it in 30, 60, or 90 days. Folks, you've got to continue to think about change. You can't continue to pray and ask the Lord to help you. He wants you to pray and say, I'm going to help myself. That's salvation, sir, with actions.
You heard it here on Socrates Garrett Live. We Believe Digital Broadcasting Studio. Until next week, you stay safe and have a good night.